Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Perspective with Viv podcast. My name is Viv, and this is the show. Today's title is The Claire's Cosmos and Consciousness with Kerie Logan. Kerie Logan is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, intuitive empath, psychic, and spiritual guide. With over 2 decades of experience, Keri helps people break free from subconscious limitations and reconnect with their soul's truth. Her work blends hypnotherapy, energy healing, and multidimensional consciousness to guide people from emotional pain to inner power. Whether she's helping clients access past life memories, activate their clear senses, or shift from 3D fear into 5D alignment, it brings a rare mix of grounded wisdom and cosmic insight. Her approach is deeply compassionate, intuitive, and empowering. And I'm so excited for you to experience her magic in today's conversation. Hi, Keri. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Such a pleasure to have you. Honestly, I've been looking forward to this conversation since the very beginning. So let's dive into the questions, shall we?
Sure.
All right. Okay. So, what led you to the path of hypnotherapy and spiritual healing? Was there a breaking open moment in your life?
That's a very good question. Like most people, I did what I thought was a societal norm, and I went into sales and marketing. And when the economy here crashed after 9/11, I I ran out of my second round of unemployment benefits. I mean, I got laid off and I couldn't find a job, and I literally was about to become homeless. Homeless, and I was a single mom, and my daughter was, I think, around 5 years old at the time. And so I was really nervous. I did not want to be homeless. I would not do that to my daughter or myself. And so I went to see a friend, and she gave me a reading, a spiritual reading. And she said, "Keri, you've done everything you need to do here in Oregon. You're going to move back to California, and the perfect job is waiting there for you. What you are meant to do it's right there." And I looked at her and I was like, I can't do that. You know, I can't afford to move back there. It's too expensive. I'm not getting child support. I can't do this. And she said, "No, the job will be handed to you. This
Wow.
is your calling." And so, like most people, I was stuck in fear. And when I was about to be evicted, which is very scary, I had to take her advice, and I called a family friend in the Sacramento area. And I told her my situation. And I said, the state will help put my belongings in storage, but that's all they could do for me. And can I stay with you? And she said, yes. And so I went down there, put everything I could in my car, packed it up. And a week later, I got a call from a gentleman that saw my resume online. And he said, "I really want to meet you. Can you meet me in an hour?" And I was like, sure. And when I showed up there, it was Positive Changes Hypnosis. It was a hypnosis clinic. And my background growing up was my mom was involved in the inner peace movement. I learned about meditation, creative visualization, how to get grounded, all that spiritual stuff. And so I told the gentleman, I know a lot about hypnosis and this and that. And I was very excited. So he gave me a tour of this brand new clinic. And when we sat in the conference room, I asked him, "Do you want to see my portfolio?" I had this 3-inch binder full of all this stuff I did. And he literally said, "No, I don't need to see it because you already got the job." He's like, "I knew I was going to hire you the minute I read your resume." So she was correct. It was handed to me. And the nice thing is the owner, once he got to know me, he wanted me to be trained in hypnosis. So he paid for everything. He paid for my NLP practitioner license. He paid, I got extensive training like in weight loss, smoking, cancer, hypnobirthing. And in 2004, they gave me an award as the best coach of the year out of 65 centers. But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker, though. The day before Thanksgiving, I got in a disagreement with the receptionist who was the owner's sister. And I went to my manager and I said, "I think she's trying to get me fired." And she looked at me and she said, "Actually, she is. And here's your final check." And I looked at her and I said, "How can you do this? You just gave me an award this year. I'm the best one here. I got 3 months of clients booked with you guys." And she said, "She's family and you're not.
Oh
You
my
have to go."
goodness. Wow.
And so I went home and I prayed and I said, "God, if this is my calling, what everyone tells me I should be doing, Give me a sign that is so clear I can't mistake it because I love what I do. I know what I do is a gift. And so I was guided from above to call that woman that fired me. And I left her a voicemail and I thanked her for firing me. And I said, I will look back at this as a blessing in disguise. I don't know why, but I know I will. And so the very next day, a client that became a friend came over with a Thanksgiving card, and she was very distraught about what happened. And she said, I've been sitting on this nest egg and I'm being guided to give it to you, no strings attached. And inside the Thanksgiving card was a check for $10,000. And she looked
No
at me and she
way.
said, I want you to start your own business. Yeah. And here's
Wow.
the other kicker is when there's two people that started the business, Positive Changes Hypnosis. It was Michael Porter and Patrick Porter. And I became best friends with Michael Porter. He was my district manager. And when I told him what happened, he said, well, Keri, the universe had to kick you in the butt because you were so dedicated, you would not have left on your own.
So true.
And he even supported me. He said, I've met hundreds of hypnotherapists, but I've never met anyone like you. And when he knew about my spiritual side, because I channel and get guidance all the time, he's like, that was the cherry on top. You've got to have your own business. I was just standing in my own way.
Wow. That's such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with me. And it speaks of alignment and being at the right place at the right time and
Yeah.
rece- receiving the right prompts at the right time as well. Because, like you said, you were dedicated. So you wouldn't have left if it was a slight nudge. Maybe you'd have gotten the message and like shrugged it off. But you needed something that was like unwavering and, final for you to know that this is where you need to go. You need to leave. But once you told me about the $10,000 check, I was like, wow, I've never heard like synchronistic events happen like that just back to back. That's so remarkable. Thank you for sharing that. So, for those who are familiar, how would you define hypnotherapy and how does it differ from mainstream idea of hypnosis?
How I would define it is one, you are getting out of your own way. It's very similar. It is the same exact thing as meditation, deep relaxation, creative visualization, guided imagery. Because what you're doing in all of those modalities is you're slowing down your brainwave patterns and you're opening up the door to your subconscious mind. And when the door is open, that's where all our habits, beliefs, behavior patterns, it's all back there in that operating system of the subconscious. And what happens is when someone is talking to you and saying what you want to create and manifest, it goes in it gets literally into that subconscious mind. So let me give you a good example. A smoker. A smoker knows consciously they should not be smoking, and that's a green light consciously. But back here, it's a red light in the subconscious. So when a person undergoes hypnosis and they're saying there's always something better to do than smoke, the person is consciously nodding their head and thinking, yes, there is. And now the subconscious can hear. And it goes, that's what you want me to do. Okay, I will change that operating system. And that's exactly what it does. So, a good example is a hypnotist back east actually contacted me because his wife's got cancer and he wanted me to make a recording for her. And I said, well, I'm not going to say the word cancer because cancer is a negative word. I would rather use malignant cells because that's neutral and she'll receive it better. Instead of saying weight loss, you're going to put in the words, you're making a healthy lifestyle change. You're eating to live a healthy, happy life. Because weight loss is so negative. It's a negative word. And so we really got to be mindful of the words we pick and we choose when, even if you're just doing self hypnosis on yourself.
Yes, definitely. And that's where your teachings on neurolinguistic programming comes in. Language, the way we speak to ourselves, you use that when you're having sessions with your clients, right?
Correct. Like, another good example is I was working with a woman that had really bad arthritis. And when I opened up the book um, by Louise Hayes about, heal your body, and I read the affirmation, I looked at the woman and I said, I can't read this to you. And she said, why? And I said, well, it wants me to say, I love myself. And you just told me you hate yourself and you hate your body. So I need to find a word that is congruent, like I'm making peace with my body. Every day I am giving myself grace. I accept my body the way it is right now. And I know my body is getting better. My body is healing. And I see you nodding your head. And when I said those words, she's like, yes, I can say that. I want that. And I said, okay, so that's the most important thing. Because if I say, I love my body, you're going to be like, you're full of it. And your mind's just going to reject it. It's going to bounce it right off.
So true. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Can you share with me what a typical session with your client is like?
A typical session, a lot of people come in and they expect a coffee conversation. That's not how it works with me. I will take you to the deep end of the ocean in 10 minutes. I cut through the chase because what speaks to me knows you so well. And it will tell me if you got generational trauma. It will tell me if you need inner child work, you need parts therapy, that's NLP. It's sort of like I listen to you, but then I listen to them at the same time. And it's me just really being quiet and holding that space of safety and security, of, nurturing, loving energy that there's no judgment, there's no shame, there's none of that. I am here to be of service for you. And I want you to get what you seek. And sometimes people come to me and they have one thing in mind, but what the divine has in mind can be completely opposite. And it floors people. Like, here's a good example. One gentleman came to me for performance anxiety. He was dating a girl that just constantly wanted attention and validation. And even in the bedroom, he was feeling uncomfortable because he wanted to feel more confident in performance. And I looked at him and I said, why do you need to wear a mask? Why can't you just be your authentic self? If she's really the right one for you, I said, this is not she's not the right one. I said, it's more about her than you. And she's projecting her insecurities onto you because what you're telling me you want makes her feel uncomfortable. And she wants you to change and conform to comply to her needs and demands. And that's not right. You're not then being authentic to yourself. And he literally sat with that for a while. And it's kind of like I could see the wheels spinning in his head. And he got it. And I made him a custom recording on really honoring his true self, whether she's going to adapt to it and change or not. And like 2 weeks later, he texted me and he's like, thank you so much. I now get the message. He ended the relationship because it's like,
Wow.
no, you deserve more. You're settling. So I go really deep with a lot of people's, and it's getting raw and real and honest because here's the honest truth here, Vivian. We have the soul experience and the human experience, and we're all here on earth to learn lessons. Everyone is a teacher and student for one another. And we get so stuck in the human experience, we can't get out of it. And we have to remember our soul is here to learn lessons. And if we do not learn it in this lifetime, you are going to come back and experience it again. And so I tell people, don't you want to get it right in this life? Don't you want to master it? Master yourself, be the best version of you? And we all do. So you can look at your pain story, your suffering. There's a gift in it. There's a lesson in it. You can transform and alchemize that pain into empowerment.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so empowering. And how long are your sessions?
It can be between an hour to an hour and a half. I don't charge by the hour. I just charge by the session.
Wow, beautiful. Okay. I wanted to ask you if you would be able to do a demo for us, for the listeners, with me as your subject. But I wasn't sure whether or not you'd be able to, because a lot of people have different approaches to their modalities. They say sometimes they need to do a certain kind of like technique to get people under and they don't feel comfortable doing it out in public. So I wanted to ask you if you'd be able to.
So I need to speak my truth here. Sometimes if I'm being called to do it, I'll do it in that moment. And other times when I'm being called to it, I can hear that no, this is a personal, private conversation that is not meant for other people to hear. And I get that with you right now. There's some
Okay.
really deep stuff you want to talk to me or ask me about that. And if you wanted to share it with your listeners at a later time, you can, what we discussed, or if you wanted to weave that into, the segment or however you want to. But sometimes it can be uncomfortable and awkward because I literally once time many years ago was in a Zoom group coaching, and I immediately spot on got on something about someone, and he was like, "How did you know that? How did you know this about me and about my family and this and that?" And it made him feel really uncomfortable,
Oh
so
no.
uncomfortable. And so I've learned to I know you're laughing. It's hard because yes, it can be really hard. And the guy was just like, I told you she was amazing. And it's
Oh,
just,
that's sweet.
and so I've learned to honor everybody's path and everybody's journey because we're afraid about what people will think about us sometimes. And yes, so it's really so we can have an in-depth conversation together.
Okay. All right. I would love that. Thank you for that. Honestly, I'm looking forward to it. So, have you had any
Sure.
clients connect with spiritual messages, past lives, or multidimensional insights during sessions?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Can you please share?
Yes, I so I'll share a few different ones. I'm a medium as well, and I remember one time working with this lady that came to quit smoking, and as I go to my door to open it, all of a sudden her grandfather pops in. I saw him in my third
Did
eye,
I?
and I literally saw him with his hand against the door saying, "Don't open the door yet. I got a message for her." And I was thinking, "Oh God, please." But I said, "Okay, what's your message?" And he said, "You need to tell her to stop telling the family members that she can see me and her grandma because they all say she's crazy and they make fun of her and she cries." And so when I relayed that message, she said, "Oh my God." And she could see him. She said, "He is here." And she's like, "Oh my God." And then her grandma popped in.
Oh,
And her
wow.
grandmother said, "I gave her this stuffed animal that's on her bed. Have her hold it and remember us that we love her." And she's like, "Yes, I have that stuffed animal on my bed."
Oh,
And
that's
she
so
was crying,
sweet.
and it was just like, wow. Yeah, very sweet. I remember one time just being in the kitchen and I got a message for a Facebook friend of mine that is India, and he loved his music. And the message I got was, "You've been depressed lately and you need to play your music. That's your gift. That's your calling." And so I messaged him on Facebook and I said, "Hey, I got this intuitive hit for you." And he said, "Oh my God, you're right. I've been depressed lately and I haven't been playing my music and I need to get back into that." And what was so beautiful is he took that guidance and actually published an album. And I was so
Oh,
excited for
wow.
him. So excited. And that was just free advice. It's just like I got the spiritual hit about you. In the past life regression area, I've been able to, if a person has a soul imprint, a wound that is impacting their life today, I'll know about it. And I've learned how to clear it. So here's a good example. A woman came to see me because she was in her 40s, kept having recurring nightmares of being chased by men in suits. And they capture her and she didn't know why. And she said, "And ever since I was a little girl, I felt like I was in the wrong family. I was always depressed. I never felt loved, truly loved by my family. And what kid feels that way? What's wrong with me?" So when we did her past life regression, she was a man in a previous life. And the love she had in that family, she said, was amazing. Such unconditional love. And the older brother got involved with the wrong crowd and owed money, and they went after him, the younger brother. So the younger brother was chased by men with suits, was captured, was shot, was thrown in a pit, left there to die, and his ailing father, who was, on his deathbed, was waiting for him at home. And he had such remorse. It wasn't his time, and the soul was so sad and so distraught. And so I asked the soul, do you want to create a new soul memory? And the soul said yes. I said, okay, because I want to help you heal and remove this imprint that's impacting this, so and so's name's life right now. And so what I did was I had the soul imagine that you weren't shot, you're just in this pit. Okay. And I want you now to imagine that the men are far away, they're not around you or can't hear you, and let's escape. And I had the soul imagine him in that lifetime escaping and getting back home with his father and taking care of his dad. And the soul was so appreciative and so happy. It was amazing. I mean, just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Another example in a woman that she was like in her 20s, had already been in 5 car accidents, didn't know why so many car accidents. But she, in a past life, died in a car accident and it wasn't her time. And I was able to go back and clear it and change it for her. So, and she hasn't been in a car accident since, and she's in her 30s. In her 20s, had been in like 5 car accidents, literally like riding a bike, hit by a car, being a passenger, a car accident. And in a past life, she was hit by a drunk driver and it wasn't her soul's time to die, to leave. But the vessel, you have to think about it. The vessel was too damaged. It couldn't come back. And that creates a scar, a wound on the soul. And so what I did with her is I created a new soul memory where she slowed down and missed the drunk driver. And the soul was so appreciative, so appreciative. And she's now in her 30s and hasn't been in a car accident since.
Wow, these are really beautiful stories. And there's something new that I've learned from you. New soul memories, new concept to me. I didn't know that if a soul had a wound, they could reimagine that triggering moment and rephrase it in their mind so that it's something more aligned with what they would like as an outcome. That's beautiful.
Yes. Well, I always say we're more powerful than we know.
We definitely are. So let's talk about consciousness, okay? What's your understanding of 3D, 4D, and 5D consciousness? How do you see people moving between these states?
So, a good example, I'll give 2 good examples. When someone is angry, they're stuck in 3D consciousness, and that anger vibrates at the frequency of 150. And when everyone gets angry, we tell them, calm down, get grounded, balanced, and centered. And that is 4D human consciousness that vibrates at 250. And we all know consciously, we all know this truth that if you make a choice, a decision coming from that mindset of anger, you are going to regret it and you will self sabotage yourself.
Yeah.
You've got all the solutions and problems are at the 4D range. And I do have these broken down, these images on the website, Master the Upper Rooms. You go to free stuff, free images, and just download it. Because that's what I do is when I work with my clients, I look at the chart and I figure out where you're stuck. Are you stuck in anger, irritability, anxiety, guilt, shame, remorse? Where are you stuck? And then I use the tools in 4D human consciousness to shift their perspective and raise their vibration. And I always say in 4D, that list, everything in there is a gift for yourself and for other people, and they're tools. So the gifts are you're adaptable, you have inner confidence, a healthy self-esteem, you accept people for who they are. There's forgiveness, you're a reasonable person. You have gratitude, you have a deep respect for others in the world. You are playful, open minded. You overcome learning blocks. You're hopeful. You're unattached to outcomes. And you have a deep respect for people. You're not just black and white. You can see the gray areas in life. And let's be honest here too. When we all make a mistake, I don't call it a mistake. I call it an error in judgment. But when you make that error in judgment, we all say, please forgive me. We all say that. And forgiveness is a 4D trait. Now, people that cannot forgive, that's a 3D state mindset. That's black and white. And I literally did a podcast episode teaching people how to forgive the unforgivable. And you don't know this about me, Vivian, and I came out this year, but I am the author of The Undetected Narcissist. And I put that information on that platform of how to forgive the unforgivable, grace through acceptance. Today, this week, I posted the pain story or the soul lesson. And I did this because a lot of people that are empaths or sensitive people, we attract the polar opposite as our teachers. So we do attract narcissistic, toxic people into our lives to teach us things. And I wanted to make it from a perspective of someone from a higher state of consciousness. So you don't get stuck in your pain story. You don't get stuck in the PTSD or trauma. You can realize this is why this happened. And now I can heal. Because a lot of people that talk about narcissism come from the mindset of hate, anger, fear. You cannot heal from that mindset. You need to rise above it.
Wow. Yes, so true and so profound. Thank you for sharing that. You know what's so funny? Let's talk about synchronicity because I was supposed to have an episode on narcissism yesterday, but it got shifted to next week. Like because the topic of narcissism is something that I'm well versed on. So hearing about your book is even more intriguing for me because I'll definitely check it out. The thing about narcissism that I do like that a lot of people may find difficult is the forgiving part. So I like that you address that because at the end of the day, we sort of do create soul contracts to attract these people into our lives to teach us lessons. That's what you're teaching us. And we could either stay stuck in 3D in that pain or transmute it into something that turns that pain into purpose. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Yes, it is. It truly is. Because here's the truth. One night when I was lying in bed, our creator said to me, "Do you know you humans create narcissistic people?" And I was like, "What?" And the creator said, "Look it up." And I did. And we actually do create them out of 3 different parenting styles. And sociopaths we create also. It is through an authoritarian parent, neglectful and absent, and then they're created out of trauma, bullying, and child abuse. And even when someone gets traumatized or has PTSD, you can be temporarily narcissistic because you're stuck in your survival brain. And that's why I want people to have compassion for them. Don't hate them. They were a child once and they got wounded, and it's sad. It's really sad. And some
Yeah.
of them want to change and grow and be a better person, and some of them don't. And that's okay. They're all here for a purpose, and they're all teachers.
I hear you. It's difficult to reconcile with, but I hear you and I understand where you're coming from. But how do we stay stuck in 3D due to fear, ego, and trauma? What does being stuck look like?
Being stuck is where you're on a constant
I
loop, and you
figured.
can't get out of it. And it's sort of like it's all consuming. And you're either stuck in anger, you could be stuck in judgment, you could just be so rigid. And the thing is you got to ask yourself, when do you want the pain to stop? When do you want the suffering to stop? Because the only one that suffering is a choice. It really is. And we got to realize that everything in life is temporary. Nothing is permanent.
I
Nothing.
love
And when I talk about forgiveness, it doesn't mean I'm telling you to forgive a monster, because I literally had to forgive a monster, but I didn't do it for him. I did it for me. For me. I did it for my kids. I did it to make the world a better place. And I realized the experience I had that was so horrific inspired me to write that book and to create The Undetected Narcissist. And that's a gift.
So true. I definitely agree with that. But what role do spiritual practices like meditation, ritual, or intention play in attaining and maintaining a 5D frequency?
It is important to maintain that D frequency to where you embody it. You're not pretending, you're not faking it. You really are the presence of peace. You can be around toxic, dysfunctional people and you accept them for who they are. It's like that saying, "You be you, and I'm gonna be me, and that's okay." It is really okay. And there is this one episode I did called Grace Through Acceptance where I taught a technique, and it's called seeds blowing in the wind. So when we're around these dysfunctional, toxic people, you wanna think of their words like seeds blowing in the wind. And when you get triggered, this is what happens. You grab that seed and you water it with how dare you, your anger, your disappointment, just, ugh, and it festers and it grows roots and it wreaks havoc. So, one, you have to recognize the trigger, but you have to also realize I have a choice. Do I want to suffer or do I want to let it blow on by? And now here's a perfect good example though, is I was around someone that was, not was kind of toxic with their words and they said something that was so mean and I let it go. And my son overheard the conversation. And when the person left, my son said to me, "Aren't you mad? How dare they say that to you?" And I was like, "What?" And then I looked at him like, "Oh, you grabbed the seed. I'm sorry. That was meant for me, not for you." Because he's like my little protector.
That is so sweet. I like what you're saying because I can relate it to personal things in my life. For example, the people that may just say snide remarks or say certain things to like trigger a reaction. And I always keep quiet, not because I can't retort, not because I can't stand up for myself, but because I don't let it stick. But people sort of see that as,
Yeah, you don't
standing up
want
for
to let it
yourself.
stick. You need to let it go.
Exactly. I think a lot of times people think that it's the fighting back and speaking back that is justifiable. Yes, you can do that, but it's a reaction, I guess. It's like you're putting more fuel into the interaction and you don't want that. So I always stay silent and it falls away. But I feel as though sometimes people take it as I can continue doing this thing, or some people take it as you're not strong enough, you have no backbone. So, but I do get where you're coming from. And I like that it affirms how I've always been around toxicity. But one thing that stands out to me is what you said
Well,
about,
when someone says,
you go.
I wanted to talk about not having a backbone.
Okay.
Because that when someone says that, they're wanting you to fight. And when you raise your level of consciousness, you realize it's not worth your energy, it's not worth your time, it's really not worth it. Yeah, I could fight, but not all warriors have to fight.
So true. So true.
You really don't. And some people, they want you to fight. They want to egg you on. They'll call you a chicken. They'll call you names because they get off on it. They're baiting you.
Yeah, they need that
And you got to
reaction.
realize your peace of mind is worth so much more than feeding into that garbage.
I totally agree with you. Thank you for sharing this because it's aspects of life that come up a lot. A lot of times people think that it's one thing to fight. That's the way of maintaining the right vibration. But really, I do believe, and I've always practiced that silence, that non reaction, not being baited, not giving a response to things that really just wash all over you, like they don't stick. So I like that we've spoken about that. It really puts sort of like some kind of like calm in my heart because sometimes I ask myself when I have conversations between my soul and my ego, I'm like, my ego is like, you should have said something, you should have said that thing at the back of your mind, that thing that first came to your mind, that's what you should have done. And then my soul is like, but you would have given them a reaction, you'd have incited something and we don't need that. So it's always hard to find that middle ground, but I'm glad that we've been able to like talk about it to this extent. Now, I'd love for us to pivot to talking about the clairs. As an intuitive empath and psychic, when did you first realize your clairs were active?
I think I had this ability for quite a long time and didn't realize it because when I was a little girl and my parents were getting a divorce, and even after the divorce, my dad would sit with me in his car and tell me his pain story, what was going on, and the wisdom that flowed out of my mouth was profound. Yeah. Like when I used to work for corporate America, one coworker said to me one day, "I don't get you. When anyone has a problem in this office, they don't go to HR, they go to you." And she was my next cubicle over. And she said, "The things you say and the advice you give them," I'm like, "You're not a psychiatrist or a therapist or a counselor, but everything you says transforms their life. She's like, it's amazing. I remember even once, and I wrote this story in the book, Affirming and Focusing and Living a Better Life. When I was a sales manager, one of my salespersons calls me up and was in crisis mode, and she was having issues with her roommate and she wanted her to move out. And she's like, I've even called the cops and stuff and I'm just so distraught. And she's coming over here in like 15 minutes. Can you come to my house and help me out? Like, just be a mediator. And I said, I can't, Teresa Ray. I can't because I'm going to go in a meeting, but I can tell you what to do and it will work. And she's like, okay, what do you want me to do? And I said, I want you to sit down, close your eyes, and send her love. What? I hate her right now. I don't want to send her love. No, I want you to sit down, close your eyes, and send her love because she was your best friend. You've loved her for a really long time and you're stuck in anger. I want you to talk to her soul. You're not talking to her as a human. You want you to talk to her soul and connect to her soul and tell her nicely that I love you. We're just not good as roommates. We're not good as roommates, and I wish the best for you. I still want to be friends with you. We're just not good as roommates, and I love you, and I'm sorry. Please forgive me for being angry at you. And she said, okay, I know you've taught me a lot, and this sounds so crazy, but I'm going to try it. And I said, good. Well, after she called me back and she was like, it worked. She came and she apologized. She got her stuff. Her soul got the message because she aligned to the vibration of love, which is the first step of 5D human consciousness. It worked. And she's like, how did you know this would work? And I said, that's what I was guided to do. And literally, that was like, oh my God, thinking like, it was over 20 years ago. I mean, when I had that experience before I even became what I do now. But yes, I've always had this divine ability. I trust it. I believe in it, and it's always here to help humanity.
I must say, this entire episode, everything you've been sharing, the stories you've been sharing about your clients, your journey, it's just been expanding like my heart. There's this excitement, like you're unlocking something inside of me as I'm listening to you. And I'm pretty sure that my listeners are going to feel the same way. So thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence because this conversation is everything so stimulating and exciting and engaging.
Thank you, Vivian.
It's my pleasure. Now, for listeners who feel emotionally overwhelmed or super sensitive, how can you tell if they're empaths and what should they know?
What I would say if someone is questioning if they're an empath or super sensitive is just go online and take a test. Really, really take a test and see because there are different kinds of empaths. I mean, I took a test and I literally had like 15 different abilities out of there. There was just one I was on the fence about. Oh yeah, there's some that I have that is very old and very ancient and very rare. And I mean, I've had people read me and one woman was like, "You are older than dirt. Your soul has done everything." She's like, "You are so old."
I love
And
that. That's a
it's
compliment.
interesting because it is a compliment because if you listen to some spiritual people, they're saying the ancient ones are coming back, and they're coming back because humanity, we are creating this new earth. And I
Yes.
am here to teach people how to master the upper rooms of human consciousness to achieve the ascension process, to be the best version of ourselves. Because all those 3D people, they're no longer going to be on this planet.
So
It's like,
true.
there's 2 realities. There's this new earth, and then there's what we have, and they're connecting together, and this is gonna collapse. And so all those souls that don't want to advance or grow, they're gonna go somewhere else. And all the people that are here that want to evolve, grow, and learn and live in harmony and community and cooperation, we're gonna stay. And that's why we're seeing all these natural disasters. You're seeing all these crimes and violence because all this chaos is either going to wake you up and shift your consciousness because it hits home, hits you where it hurts, or you just won't come back here because this planet is done with it. It's done.
Wow. That's so empowering to hear because A lot of times in the old world, because now I feel like we actually are shifting, people like us felt so weird and out of like, we didn't fit in. And what we knew was so woo and so out there. And we were kind of like isolated or categorized as weirdos. And it's very, what's the right word? Affirming to have been able to cultivate and embody authenticity and truth despite what society was saying we were or how they perceived us, and to reach a point where us being in that energy is uplifting the earth, in which people like us can rule and teach and raise kids and create a new society. It's like the happiest thing for me, honestly. When we have conversations like this and people affirm it to me and tell me that, oh yeah, new earth, consciousness, rising vibrations, I feel very, very affirmed, because I know what it was like to have been a person that had gifts that kept it to herself because of how it would be received and perceived.
Yes, and that's where you have to learn and discern who do you share with and who do you not. Because as you know, there's mean people out there,
So
there's
true.
trolls, there's people
Yes.
out there that are so angry and they hate their life and they're literally like spewing their toxic vomit everywhere. And
Yes.
you've got to I say have mercy for those people because it's got to be miserable being them, and count
So
your
true.
blessings, you're not them.
So
Really. I mean, that is grace through acceptance. Just you gotta let it go and hope that maybe they find their way. And some will and some won't. But yes, I mean we're all here for a reason, and we're here specifically in this time of great change and great transformation.
yes, thank you so much for that, honestly. Now, speaking of your gifts, how do you receive messages? What are your strongest clear senses? Because you did mention that you have 15 other abilities, so I'm open to hearing.
So I will either get a message. It's sort of like a thought just pops in my head, and I'll be like, "Ooh, that's interesting." Or it could be I'm shown something. Like when it came to generational trauma, once a guy came to work with me that had really bad anxiety, and what they were showing me was a mouse just darting all over the place, just always super hyper vigilant, and it was his mom. And I said, "Ooh, did your mom have really bad anxiety because I see this?" And he's like, "Yes. Oh, it drove me nuts." And then it told me the grandmother did too. And I said, "And the grandmother also?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Okay, so you picked up the habit because it was modeled to you. And because when we're born, we're like a ball of clay and we just pick up all this stimuli from our environment, society, culture." And I said, "So we can clear that, and let's clear your timeline. Let's just go all the way back the generational line and just clear it all for everybody, so we don't have this anxiety anymore." And it just took one session. And the next time I saw the guy, he was chill and relaxed. I was like, holy cow. That was amazing.
It's so
And thank
amazing.
you. There's times where I will sit in front of my mic and I just channel. That's actually my favorite when I'm doing a recording for someone. I made a recording once actually for a Catholic nun that had PTSD. Yeah, and at the end of the session, she said, "Do you know God talks to you?" And I said, "How do you know?" And she said, "Because everything you said and described, I saw it before you mentioned it. And it was like you were holding my hand, walking with me every step of the way." And I said, "I was, because that's what he wanted me to do for you."
Wow,
And in 2
beautiful.
sessions, her PTSD was gone. So it all depends. I've gotten to the place that I trust everything that I get, everything that I hear, that I see, that I feel. I could feel if someone has heartache, I'll be like, "Ooh, you have," because I will feel it in me. And I even had the ability to pull stuff out of people, which kind of scared me, where one time I was working with my son on a deep rooted trauma, and I pulled it out of him and he felt great. And when he walked away, what said to me is, "You need to go purge now." And I'm like, "What?" And it said, "Yes, you took all his pain and it's in you." And I literally went to the bathroom and was purging, purging, purging. And when I looked in the toilet, there was nothing there, nothing there. But it was all the energetic trauma that was stuck in him that I just pulled it all out. I didn't even know I
Wow.
had that ability.
That's
I took
beautiful.
a course in matrix energetics where I was doing hands on with this one woman that had extreme hip pain. And I just followed his procedure and did what it wanted. And she looked at me and she's like, "Oh my God, my pain is gone. What did you do?" And I said, "I just set the intention and I saw the triangle and I shifted the triangle and I filled it with the colors that they told me to fill it with." And she was like, "You made it go away." And I was felt so uncomfortable. And she was like just telling everyone, "Oh, she did this. She did this." And I was just like, "No, please, I'm not ready for this." And so and that's the
Wow.
hard part for anyone that's listening to this is sometimes we have these gifts and abilities and we don't know it until we're put in a situation where we actually are like, "Holy cow, I did this." And we don't understand what we just did. I didn't know about spiritual purging. I didn't know, you know, how to do certain, things that I've done. And it's just, I call it's learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing those beautiful stories. So remarkable, honestly. But what makes somebody have more clairs, or what makes somebody have clairs that are stronger than other clairs? Like, for example, with me, I'm more clairsentient and claircognizant than anything else. What's your theory behind that?
My theory behind it is it's more it's what you're comfortable with, and if you want to expand out in different areas, you can, but you really gotta set the intention. Like, some people say, "I really wanna see someone's aura. I wanna be able to see that." But sometimes to be able to see that, it might open the doorway where you see things you don't wanna see.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's why I say you first got to set your intention and you got to be really specific on what it is you want to see. And because that's the whole key thing is intention, 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 and really focusing on that. So if you're working with someone, you can set that intention that when I'm around this person, if I can't see their aura, I want to be able to feel their energy. I want to be able to feel maybe what's going on inside of them, but make sure that you're protected if you're going to do that. You really do. I'm a firm believer of working with what you call the D 2D elements, which are the rocks and crystals. And so I love black tourmaline.
Same.
Yeah, and I wear bracelets that are to protect me. And I even when I work with clients, sometimes I'll tell them to hold a certain stone because that's what I'm being called to do. So a lot of times I work with petrified wood because it has to do with fear. And any
Wow.
fear that you have, instead of me taking it out of you, the wood, petrified wood, would absorb it.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's amazing. And since we've spoken lightly on crystals, I love crystals so much. And I love that they're a part of nature that help you to pull certain qualities that you're trying to highlight in yourself. For example, lapis lazuli. Love lapis lazuli because I wasn't somebody that used my throat chakra a lot back then, but if it found me, and I love the way that they speak to you. Another one is selenite, you know, and clear quartz. Oh my gosh, because I've always loved manifesting. So clear quartz has that energy, and selenite having that energy of cleansing as well. Just beautiful. But I love when people combine it with the
Yes.
work, with their work. I love when people do that. I've not gotten to that point, but I do make that intention, and I've seen differences when it comes to my sleep because I found it easy to connect with them while sleeping for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. What are some common blocks people experience when it comes to their psychic abilities? And how can one refine them?
Well, when it comes to psychic abilities, always what speaks to me always says, what's your intentions behind it? Are you going to use it to help heal the world and improve the quality of a person's life? Or are you going to use it to take advantage of them and to take money from them? And, because I remember one time going to a new local psychic that opened up to welcome her to the community. And she wanted to give me a reading. And immediately I knew she was a fraud. She was great at what she did. She was a good psychic, but how you know they're a fraud is she pretty much said, you have these 7 windows that are blocked and I can clear it for you. And it's going to cost $75 for each window to be cleared.
No.
Yeah, she was there to make money and profit, to take it she had what you would call spiritual narcissism. She was there to take advantage of you. She was not there to be truly of service. So you have to be able to recognize who is genuine with their gifts and who is using it to take advantage of you. So you really got to ask yourself, can I do this for free? Because that's the way I look at it. I never advertise at all the gifts that I do. I want you to experience it. I'm not going to advertise it. It's whatever calls me for you to experience in that moment. And to me, that means truly being of service, using your gifts and abilities. And so I say practice, really practice, practice. There's lots of tricks and tools of how to increase your psychic abilities, but the most important thing is our creator wants to make sure that you use it as a gift and a blessing for the world, to not hurt or harm someone, but to heal someone, to give someone guidance, direction. You see the difference? And
Yes, I
that's
do.
why our and anyone has these abilities. Everyone has them. It's just, where is it your ego that wants it, or is it your soul's heart desire?
Thank you so much for that. Just before we leave, what final message do you have for those that are listening?
The final message would be, if you want to learn more about yourself, you want to learn more about, let's say, dealing with, dysfunctional, toxic people, because everyone has to. I mean, we all are going to. You can find me on different platforms. I'm on mastertheupperrooms.com. I'm on undetectednarcissist.com. And I also, the first company I started was called Empowered Within, and I'm on there as well.
Okay.
And a really great book about manifesting, literally manifesting, because I used to teach a law of attraction for 2 years. And then
Mm.
1 year I said, no, I want to do a mastermind class. And in 10 months, I manifested over 22 things my heart desired in 10 months.
Oh my
And I wrote about it
goodness.
in the book, Affirming and Focusing on Living a Better Life. That's on Amazon. It's got a 5-star rating. The Undetected Narcissist is on Amazon as well. It's got the same rating. So there's different ways. I'm on YouTube and Instagram. There's different ways to get a hold of me.
So, thank you so much, Keri, for this beautiful conversation. I learned so much, and I know that my listeners learned the same as well. Like, this really was heart expanding and very enlightening. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful session. If something in this conversation stirred something deep inside of you, listeners, trust it. That's your spirit nudging you toward expansion. To work with Keri or explore her offerings, visit www.mastertheupperrooms.com. She's offering a free 15-minute consultation plus $20 off any order over $100. Just use the coupon shared. Just use the coupon code she shared during this interview. And if this episode resonated with you, please like, share, and leave a comment on our socials. You can find us on all social media platforms at Perspective with Viv. Your feedback keeps the conversation alive, and your shares help this work reach the souls who need it. Till next time, listeners. Bye.